The stack of hospital bills on my kitchen table was taller than my coffee mug. Each new envelope felt like a fresh wave of panic, threatening to pull me under. My mother's cancer treatment was bleeding me dry. As a junior intern at Vance Industries, my salary was a single drop in an ocean of debt. I was drowning. That's when he called me. Julian Vance, the CEO. He summoned me to his panoramic office, a place that felt like the top of the world. He was everything you'd imagine. Elegance and power personified. A man I'd only ever seen from a great intimidating distance. "Anya," he said, his voice as smooth and cool as the marble on his floor. "I understand you're in a difficult situation. I have a proposition." A business arrangement. He slid a contract across his vast mahogany desk. It wasn't a promotion or a bonus. It was a marriage agreement. The terms were insane. For 1 year, I would become his wife. I'd play the part of a happy, stable partner to appease the company board and a demanding grandfather whose inheritance was conditional on Julian being a settled family man. It was a performance. In return, he would pay off every single cent of my mother's debt. And at the end of the year, he'd give me $5 million. It was humiliating. It was a deal with the devil. But looking at the mountain of bills waiting for me at home, knowing my mother's life was on the line, it was my only hope. With a hand that shook so badly I could barely hold the pen, I signed the papers. My life was no longer my own. Our wedding was as cold as it was lavish, a spectacular show for the cameras and a handful of important guests. He placed a stunning diamond on my finger, but it felt less like a ring and more like the first bar of a cage. I moved into his mansion, a beautiful, sterile palace where I was just another ornament in his perfectly staged life. In public, he was the doting husband, a hand always on the small of my back, a practiced smile for anyone who looked our way. In private, he was a stranger. We passed each other in the long, silent hallways like ghosts, and he barely acknowledged my existence. The first crack in his perfect facade appeared about a month in. I was in my bedroom, my own separate bedroom, of course. He had his own wing of the mansion, and I noticed a painting was slightly crooked. As I went to adjust it, something caught my eye. A tiny, blinking red light, almost invisible, hidden inside the smoke detector on the ceiling. It was a camera. A camera in my private bedroom. My blood ran absolutely cold. I stormed into his study, the contract feeling like a worthless piece of paper. I confronted him, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. For the first time, his mask of polite civility slipped. He didn't deny it, he smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was a cold, cruel thing that didn't reach his eyes. "It's for security, my dear," he said calmly, "and for insurance. You see, if you ever think of breaking our contract early or speaking a word about our little arrangement to anyone, the footage of you in that room, well, it would be very, very damaging for your reputation." Blackmail. That's what it was. I wasn't just his temporary wife. I was his prisoner. The beautiful mansion was a high-tech jail, and he was the warden watching my every move. I was trapped. But desperation can be a powerful motivator. It can make you brave or it can make you reckless. For me, it was a little of both. I started snooping. I couldn't fight him head-on, so I had to find a weakness. My time in the IT department hadn't been for nothing. I'd learned a few things. Late one night, I managed to hack into his home server. I searched through endless files until I found it. A folder heavily encrypted, labeled with his late father's name. It took me hours to break the encryption, my heart pounding with every keystroke. Inside, there wasn't a will or old family photos. It was a financial ledger. And as my eyes scanned the entries, my heart stopped. There they were, monthly payments, large ones. Made out to my mother's oncologist, Dr. Evans. My stomach lurched when I saw the dates. The payments had started 6 months asterisk before asterisk my mother was even diagnosed. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was a plan. This whole nightmare wasn't a random tragedy I'd stumbled into. It had been constructed, piece by piece, by the man I now called my husband. He had created my financial crisis. He had preyed on my deepest fear, my love for my mother, and engineered the entire situation. He had pushed me to the edge of a cliff so he could be the only one to offer me a hand, but on his terms. Armed with this information, I went to see Dr. Evans. I had a hidden recorder in my purse. I showed him a printout of the ledger. At first, he tried to deny it, but his face went pale and his hands started to shake. Under pressure, he broke down completely. He confessed everything. Julian had paid him to falsify my mother's initial tests to make her condition appear far more dire and her treatment far more expensive than it actually was. The emotion that washed over me wasn't sadness or even just betrayal. It was pure, unadulterated rage. A cold, focused fury that burned away all my fear. He hadn't just used me. He had played God with my mother's health. I didn't confront Julian. Not yet. An outburst would get me nothing. He held all the cards, or so he thought, so I waited. I planned. My revenge needed to be as public and as devastating as the humiliation he had forced upon me. The day of the big annual board meeting finally arrived. This was his moment of triumph, the day he would finally secure his full inheritance by proving he was the family man his grandfather wanted. He stood at the podium beaming, delivering a passionate speech about family values and corporate legacy. The irony was suffocating. As he spoke, I made my move. I had a friend in the AV department. On my signal, the giant screen behind Julian flickered. His corporate presentation vanished. Instead, the screen played the hidden camera footage, but it wasn't of me. I had spent days editing the audio from my meeting with Dr. Evans, carefully splicing it with audio I'd recorded of Julian himself. His own voice, clear as a bell, echoed through the silent, stunned hall. I needed a wife no one would miss, Julian's voice boomed. Then Dr. Evans' voice confessing the plot. Then Julian again, a poor, desperate girl I could control. I made her desperate. The look on his face, the raw shock, the flash of fury, and then the slow, dawning horror of utter ruin was my reward. It was my $5 million. The board voted him out on the spot. When he and Dr. Evans tried to leave the building, the police were waiting for them. The contract was voided. He had already paid my mother's real medical bills, and she is now in full recovery, finally knowing the truth of what happened. I never got the millions he promised me, but I got something so much better. I got my freedom back. I got my dignity back. And I got the profound satisfaction of watching a man who thought he owned the world, who thought he owned me, lose everything because of the quiet, desperate girl he so carelessly underestimated. I learned that the richest prisons don't have bars. They have chandeliers and ironclad contracts. And sometimes the quietest prisoner is the one holding the key to the entire kingdom. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next video.